Hi there, and welcome back to this channel if you have been here before, or welcome if you are new. I'm Sándor, and I'm here to talk about my eating disorder recovery and anything else that's related to the topic. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional or a therapist. I only talk about my recovery because I believe it can be helpful to hear that other people went through the same stuff you are going through and they came out the other end. Keep in mind that these are just my opinions and experiences. Nothing I say is meant to be prescriptive. Some of the things that work for me could work for you as well, but recovery takes some experimentation, and you need to be in charge of that. When we think of eating disorders, most of us probably picture a young, white, emaciated girl who is struggling with anorexia, the stereotypical representation in the media, even though anorexia is not the most common eating disorder. That would be binge eating disorder, and men can also suffer from eating disorders. According to the National Eating Disorder Association, up to 25% of people with eating disorders are male. And that translates to millions of men and boys affected by these disorders worldwide. These numbers might be actually higher because men are less likely to, seek help and more likely to be misdiagnosed, so they simply don't show up in these statistics, or at least a portion of these people won't show up in these statistics. One of the reasons men are underrepresented in these statistics is the pervasive stigma surrounding eating disorders and masculinity. Eating disorders are often perceived as a, female issue, quote unquote, making it difficult for men to admit their struggles and seek help. If you are a guy, you are less likely to open up about your struggles because you are most likely afraid of being seen as weak or unmanly or feminine. So a lot of men choose to, suffer in silence instead. From a very young age, men are expected to be strong and stoical and emotionally resilient, which leaves little room for vulnerability and seeking help or admitting that you have a problem. Expressing emotions that, make you look vulnerable is often viewed as a sign of weakness for men. Unlike women who may find social support when they open up about their struggles and who are allowed to be vulnerable to a certain degree, men are often ridiculed and face disbelief and invalidation when they discuss their mental health issues, including eating disorders. Basically, if you are a man, you are supposed to tough it out or, man up, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Another factor that created this lack of awareness and resources that are tailored for men is the fact that research and treatment for eating disorders have focused on women historically. And because of this lack of awareness, healthcare providers may not recognize the signs of eating disorders in male patients or point these patients to, appropriate or tailored resources. The most commonly used eating disorder assessments were developed for women, reflecting the historical perception that eating disorders predominantly affect women. Consequently, these tools may not accurately capture the symptoms and experiences of men. Although eating disorders are mental illnesses, they will manifest in physical symptoms, and these physical symptoms can manifest differently in men, and on top of that, biases among healthcare professionals can lead to misdiagnosis. Men are more likely to be diagnosed with other mental health issues instead of an eating disorder, and this gap in understanding perpetuates this cycle of underdiagnosis and misdiagnosis. For example, reliance on body mass index thresholds may overlook men who exhibit severe symptoms of anorexia without meeting the low BMI criteria. Men and women have different body compositions, and BMI calculations or charts that do not adjust for factors such as gender or age or race or ethnicity can skew BMI higher or lower. Your height also affects BMI calculations, so tall individuals with a specific body type will always have a higher BMI than shorter people with the same body type. Some of the diagnostic criteria focus on the female reproductive cycle. A disruption to your menstrual cycle can be a symptom or an indicator that you have an eating disorder, but that's obviously absent in men. Another thing that can potentially make recovery more complicated for guys is the fact that male therapists are underrepresented, at least in the UK they are. So male therapists who actually have personal experience with eating disorder and openly talk about their experience will be harder to find. Similarly, in treatment centers or support groups, there will be fewer males, and that can make you feel like an outsider as a guy. The latter, by the way, is not my experience, because I actually preferred to have a female therapist while I was recovering, and I went to a support group where every single person dealt with a different issue, so there was no such thing as an outsider there. Eating disorders are commonly stereotyped as, women's issues, perpetuated by the media portrayals that primarily show these young, emaciated white girls as eating disorder sufferers. By the way, the media does a particularly bad job at depicting eating disorders and, being inclusive when it comes to depicting eating disorders. There is a lot of romanticizing going on, and this narrow representation also marginalizes men with eating disorders who do not fit this stereotype. This media portrayal also contributes to healthcare professionals misdiagnosing and the public overlooking eating disorders in men because, we don't really have public examples. We are not really educated on how eating disorders can show up in men. I think if you are a guy suffering from an eating disorder, it is very easy to feel ashamed and alone or misunderstood when you are trying to discuss your struggles. I remember that when I was dealing with my eating disorder, there was very few male voices online discussing their experiences in detail, and I had never heard any other guy in my social circles who had an eating disorder. I think this lack of representation made it easier for me to, minimize my own struggles, and made it harder for me to even just entertain the possibility that I had an eating disorder. On top of that, I was actually in a pretty weird spot because of my sexual orientation and the internalized homophobia I was dealing with at the time. I think a lot of gay guys who, deal with internalized homophobia will experience the societal expectation to be manly differently. So these guys, past me included, will try to appear more manly to make up for the fact that they are gay, or if they don't try to appear more manly, they at least try not to appear more feminine. Because of this, because of my needs to appear less feminine, admitting to myself that I had this female issue or talking about it with someone else would have made me appear more feminine, at least in my head. So I kind of had this extra barrier to punch through, so to speak. Men's issues with their body image are often overlooked or downplayed compared to women's experiences. I feel like there is a more welcoming or open space for women to open up about their struggles with their body image. But for guys, there is this expectation that you should not care about your appearance too much because that is a sure sign of vanity or whatever, or that's a feminine thing to do. And this actually inhibits open discussions about body image issues for men. To be fair, the societal ideal of a lean and muscular body type for men has persisted for ages, while women's body ideals often shift with trends, making it even harder for women to, keep up with these ever-changing trends. However, the ideal male body and achieving this ideal male body has become increasingly unrealistic over the last decades, and many men feel pressured to conform to this ideal body type as a sign of masculinity, which can be detrimental to their relationship with food and body image. I also think that men will less likely to have an intervention or raise concerns if they spend a lot of time in the gym, spend a lot of time with exercising. This is often overlooked as a potential red flag when it comes to men. If a woman does that, that will be more likely to raise a red flag, and that will be more likely to make us think that there is some underlying issue to that. But when a guy does this, we tend to, see this as dedication, and we celebrate guys for trying to stay fit. And an even bigger issue is that we tend to think that being fit and being healthy are synonymous, even though that is not necessarily true. Anyway, one of the reasons I talk about my experiences with eating disorders and talk about my recovery is to increase representation for men and hopefully make you feel less alone, regardless of your gender.